It was just gorgeous.
You know, it's hard as you look at that calendar, you see a beautiful September day, and you know that 9/11 is approaching, to not have our thoughts on that day. USA Today had an interview with our next guest, former boss today, the President of the United States, George W. Bush, reflecting on that day and how he spent the minutes after he learned about this event in prayer for the victims. And everybody has a memory, including our next guest, who's been the head of the National Security Agency that played an integral role in tracking down the terrorists, and later a CIA director, our friend General Michael Hayden, on the Common Sense Club and the Scott Hannon Show. General, how are you?
Oh, doing well. Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to chat today.
So 9/11, early in the morning, beautiful September day. Bring us back to your thoughts and what was going through your mind at the moment that you realized America was under attack.
Yeah, and your description is right. I remember it. Cloudless sky up and down the East Coast, unusually cool for that morning. It was just gorgeous. I get told shortly after 9, plane hit one of the towers. Natural assumptions, sport plane, small plane, accident. Told a bit later, plane hit the second towers. Calculus changes completely. I turn to my executive assistant and tell her to get the head of security up here right away. I'm in my office at NSA headquarters. As the director of security is coming through one of the doors into my office, my executive assistant comes in through the other door and says, explosions on the mall in downtown Washington. Later turned out to be the plane hitting the Pentagon. I didn't even let my security chief talk. I said, all non-essential personnel out of the compound immediately. We have no scientific way to tell you how many stayed or left. My best guess, 5,000 to 7,000 people stayed at work, self-identified as mission essential. We began to move them from the 2 high-rise buildings, in which our headquarters is located, for reasons that should be obvious, and put them in an old building, a low-rider 3-story, called our original operations building. And blessedly, sometimes God has a plan, the command post that I would use is in that building, and it had all the communications anyone could ever want. So I decamped to that building, and we started fighting the war.
And it literally was a war. I mean, was it the Pentagon? Was it the second plane? Was it the reports of the explosions on the mall when you immediately had in your mind that you were on a war footing? Now we were on a war footing?
Yeah, second plane into the tower. I mean, when that happened, without any additional information or data, you knew instinctively in the way that you know this is an absolute truth and you don't need additional facts to prove it. This is Al-Qaeda. And that Al-Qaeda, which had been threatening American interests abroad, had just conducted an incredibly significant attack on the American homeland. And Congress got around a few days later to passing the authorization for the use of military force. But actually, I began using authorities that I had as director of NSA that were not normally used in peacetime. I mean, one of the rules we work under, Scott, is something called reasonableness, because, the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, protects us against unreasonable search and seizure. Well, the definition of reasonableness depends on the circumstances. I got a hole in Pennsylvania, 2 buildings falling down in New York, and part of the Pentagon in flames. What was reasonable earlier that morning is no longer reasonable that afternoon. And I used the full extent of my authorities to move, as you suggest, war footing.
National Security Agency, CIA, you were the first director of the National Intelligence apparatus. Compare where we are in handling a war footing against radical Islamists that ultimately were responsible for those attacks on 9/11 10 years ago today versus where we are today. Yeah,
three big differences, and maybe not in a priority order, but as they come to mind. Number one, it's going to sound repetitive, but we're at war. That's a big deal. If you imagine pre-9/11, we're playing perpetual defense. The demands for perpetual defense are incredible. We now play offense. We now take the fight to the enemy. We make him worry about his survivability rather than spending his entire day thinking about how he can threaten ours. And when an enemy is under threat, you get more intelligence from them because they're forced to do things they'd rather not do. So that's one, taking the fight to the enemy. Number 2 was focus and resources. When I was director of CIA, I had $2 at my disposal for every $1 George Tenet had on September 10th. So the second is we were brought some mass to bear on the problem. And the third is we just frankly got better at what it is we do. We collected more information. We got more innovative technology. And in this particular war, probably most important, we got better at human penetrations of al-Qaeda that gave us the kind of detailed, granular knowledge you need to break up these kinds of attacks. And, frankly, although we were never as bad as some people alleged we were, we got better at sharing information between agencies.
No attack on our soil since 9/11. Is that a victory for the apparatus you just described, or is it an MO of our enemy plotting and planning the next big one?
No, he's wanted to attack. He's tried attacks. The closest we've gotten, I think, got to a big one may have been the summer of '06, when you had about 24 British citizens of Pakistani extraction, really far along on a complex plot to destroy simultaneously multiple wide bodies over the Atlantic between the British Isles and North America, both the United States and Canada. It has not been for want of trying that these guys have not yet gotten back to the American mainland for an attack. The rate at which we have been able to kill and capture them, and particularly in the last several years, going back to the last year of the Bush administration, simply kill them. We are now at a rate where our ability to take them off the battlefield is greater than their ability to create talented leaders.
Thanks to a great service of yours and many others like you, General Hayden. Thanks for your reflections on this 10-year anniversary of 9/11. We appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity.